Greetings, everyone. Nate the Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, hanging out with a nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted, how you doing, everybody?
Yeah, we're going to be just chilling and chatting and answering some questions. And Dave is on his long journey across state to Origins.
According to when I last spoke to him, he still had a little over 4 hours left, based on that time frame then, which was like an hour or so ago. Was looking to be in Ohio about 4:30. So if you happen to be in that particular area, going to Origins, hit him up. We can get a hold of him. Easiest way to do is send him an email at nerdarchy@gmail.com, and we'll get him connected to you so you guys can totally hang out.
So I'm just organizing chat stuff. There we go.
Yep. So I apologize for us starting a little late. You know, there's a craziness going on, and right now we're putting a lot of effort in a lot of different directions. As I said, Dave is on his way to Origins, and while that's happening, we're trying to wrangle Nerdacon going. So
yes, and that's really exciting. It's happening July 22nd, and I saw a dash there for the 23rd. So.
Yeah, well,
we'll see how that goes.
That's a kind of up in the air kind of thing, depending upon.
But right now, definitely the 22nd of July.
Absolutely, we've already locked in like 8 GMs to run games. We've already got a handful of performers, panelists, and what have you. So the event's filling up pretty good.
Yes, we'll have more information on that later today, probably. I'm thinking we're going to have that.
We're actually hoping to start ticket sales tomorrow. If you are looking to go, there's some stuff that needs to be wrangled and discussed, prior to. So, Dave, if you're listening in, expect a phone call when this is over.
All right. What else do we need? You gave me a list, didn't you?
Well, and I figured we'd get into what we need to actually talk about, and what have you, and we can periodically mention the cool stuff that.
Yeah, now we're doing the event down in the AC, down in Atlantic City, New Jersey, on the 22nd of July, and then on the 29th of July, Ted and Dave are going to be on site in on the West Coast for the being on GM Tips with Satine Phoenix. And that's going to be happening on the 29th, but it's not going to be aired on the 29th. It's going to be shot on the 29th, filmed, right. whatever the speak is for that stuff. I just do videos on the internet. I don't know what I'm talking about.
They film four sets of GM Tips at a time, and then when they're ready to release it, we don't know what the schedule looks like as to when ours will air, but we'll certainly, you know the way we do things. We'll get it shared out there. Everybody will know. Everybody will see it. So, what did you have in mind to talk about today, Nate? We've got lots going on.
Oh, yeah, lots of going on. Did we have any questions from Patreon? Because I wanted to make sure we got this.
We did have a question from patron Jimmy.
Let's just warm up with that.
All right. So he wants to know, how do we handle different levels of campaign prep, I guess you could call it. And he doesn't mean like, levels of characters, but in like levels of geography. So for instance, if you're going to travel, your players are going to travel into the Underdark, do you have the whole sequence mapped out, or, with all exits and retreat points? Do you wing it? Do you treat it like a maze? So I'll let you answer first, and then, I'll go into mine.
Okay. I usually, for the Underdark, you know what? I had always kind of thought of it otherworldly, and so different that I actually really enjoyed the concept. I was confused when Matt Colville was on, and he was going back through his game, and he said someone was banished from the Underdark, and they were back in the regular above ground. I'm like, well, how does that work out? And he said because he treats it as if it's a separate plane of existence, like it's just a different area, almost like the Feywild is a different area from the prime material plane. And I actually think the next time I run the Underdark, when it's not Gryffindor, because we don't, I guess the Underdark's normal in Gryffindor, in the Chimes of Discordia, thing. So what I'm going to do the next time I just run in a game for fun, I'm probably going to just have the Underdark be like a separate, like you have to go through some kind of portal or some through a Fey arc or a Fey well or something. Yeah, falling down the well is not so original for going to a different place, but you know what? The trope's there for a reason. It makes a lot of sense. So I think the next time I do the Underdark, that's how I'm going to treat the Underdark going in there. But I'd say for like a generic campaign where there's not actually separate places, I'd have the intro to the Underdark thought out in advance if that's where you want them to go, and then I'd give them several entrances to the Underdark, and they can kind of choose when they're going to enter, so that it's not like, all right, we're going down under. Hope you brought your scuba gear and stuff. There's growl and terrible things, hook cars and stuff. So I want that to be something that I want them to know they eventually have to do. Kind of like in your game where we knew we had to go for the Death Tyrant, but we didn't necessarily have to do it just right then. We could have gone in a different order, but we chose to do it that way. So I would like to give them the option, because the Underdark is a big. You're saying we're not going to be in town for a while, and we're going to be stuck in all kinds of nastiness, and pretty much not have the feeling of relaxation of not being on an adventure until we're out of the Underdark. So I'd want to definitely make that be a choice. Like, okay, we're done in town for a while. I don't have any pressing needs to RP with somebody in town or get my armor made or anything like that. That's all ready to go. We can go down.
So I would look at it, from a completely different spectrum at starting, because number one, there's a lot that goes into that kind of level of commitment, I guess you could say, and as a GM, you have to figure out what part of that commitment is important to you. Are you looking for exploration? Are you looking for them to potentially get lost? How much tension in their travels are you looking to have? How prepared are you as a GM to throw them for a loop to get off track? With the game that I run, or the sessions that I run, I tend to have a concept of what I'd like to see for the session, and sometimes things get completely blown off track. Other times it's like, okay, well, this can be wrapped up as a little short, a little mini session or a little mini story in this one session. So even though it was recorded and hasn't gone up on the channel yet, the thing that I had happen at this past Saturday, it was a little mini story that transpired, and I needed to have that story wrapped up because I was dealing with, a limited number of players at the table and no way to enter in the other players. So it needed to wrap up by what we would call as our typical wrap up time. So if you're like, all right, well, we're going to go in the Underdark, and you want the tension there, well, then you could completely either map out a whole dungeonous labyrinth of the Underdark with a painstaking amount of work, and be prepared for the players to just, okay, well, we're going to just stop it here and you'll pick up in this location next time. You can do that, and you can literally have, all right, you're scrounging for food, you're having to spend time looking for a defensible place to actually set up camp, not knowing where a town is, not knowing where a point of safety might happen to be. It's the Underdark. It's not going to be, all sunshine and rainbows. In fact, it's usually quite the opposite. If you're not looking for that level of tension, you're not looking for that level of detail or work, you literally could sit back and say, okay, I want to go, and do X. So when my players ran into the Underdark, I knew, okay, they needed to find the city of Volgren. From there, they were able to leapfrog to where this Death Tyrant was going to be. And it was weeks and weeks worth of travel to get there. But because they had done some research, because they had talked to townsfolk of people who lived in the Underdark, they were able to secure a map, and therefore they were able to stay on track. This took a lot of weight off of my shoulders as a GM to put in twists and turns and wrong ways, because I didn't personally want to go through the extra work. I didn't want to take the players down that road. They were on a much bigger quest, so I thought getting to that part of the adventure was more important than going down that level of, oh no, we're lost.
And I personally like the red caps,
Mm-hmm.
your take on Deep Dwarf Blood Cultist. I thought it was a good mix of lore and the actual, goings on in your campaign.
Well, number one,
And that felt kind of like a detour, but it also,
well,
it was like the classic. Hey, you found the trolls and you've defeated them, and here's their money.
right. Well, the typical thing with the idea of red caps is generally they're considered a fae, regardless of what edition of D&D you're doing it, and they're more like elvish, gnomish kind of things. But I liked the concept from the R.A. Salvatore series with the Prowies, and they were dwarves, and I was like, well, I could make them be a version of Dark Dwarf, and I could tie that literally to the cult of Narkitis, which is the overarching plot. And I'm certain that most of my players at this point in time have picked up that they've encountered Narkitis people wherever they've gone. Yeah, you might have driven them out of Gryffindor, but you know what? They're still out there. You've encountered them in the Underdark. You've encountered them, heading to the floating city. You may or may not have encountered them in Rylor or in, Draulic. But you know what? It's clear that his influence is widespread throughout the world. So yeah, you've driven him out of one location, but that's one location. He's not stopped. You've merely put a dent in his plans. You haven't stopped him.
All right, respond in the chat.
Yep. Vote booty for Troll 2020.
We're just having a little fun in the chat.
Oh, it always happens. So, Jimmy goes on to, in addition to layers of the Underdark and that kind of stuff, do we allow players to build their own secret hideouts or their own buildings in their hometowns? And my players in this particular game haven't really shown much interest in doing anything with the area that I totally laid out for them.
Yeah, we totally took that blood cultist place over and we're like, yeah, let's use this as a base and never go back to it again.
You guys went back to it like once, maybe twice.
Yeah, once or twice. We're like, oh yeah, I'm hanging out at the base, even though there's nothing to do there. That we thought of anyway. And you know what? I've got my grove, and I go back there all the time out of game.
Right.
But I don't mention it in game, nor do I soak up time from everybody to say I'm at my grove doing druid stuff. That even though I'm a nature cleric, but I would like to produce more of that and like kind of have a sum up of what I've done over the year or so of time that I've had dealing with that in my off time.
Well, a lot of the players.
I know we haven't had a lot of off time, but again, that's kind of my hangout spot when I'm not working in town.
Well, like a lot of the players in my particular game have access to something that is kind of theirs. You've got the Druid Grove, which is now kind of infested with pixies thanks to the Scarlet Sisterhood.
Yeah, and I've deemed not they're worthy to stay, so they don't get kicked out.
Mark's character has set up his mercenary lodge. Dave's character built his own smithy shop. Scott's character from very early on bought a building and was running a little shop. And again, it's not up on the channel yet, but in the last session, he's actually has access to a wizard's tower. So I mean that's a good percentage of the players in the game that have the ability to literally have a place that's their own. Yeah, they might not all be secret. They might not be, hidden away from everybody, but they've got a hidden place. They've got something that they can call their own that very few people actually know anything about. They haven't done anything with it. So if you guys have any questions for Nate and I this week, we're going to be doing this thing every day while Dave is off at Origins. Now you can reach out to us, either in the chat here. You can reach us at nerdarchy@gmail.com. But we're pretty much going to answer whatever questions you guys happen to have. Possibly do some world building, get Chimes of Discordia fleshed out a little bit, and just try to hang out with you guys and keep the ball rolling. Last thing we want to have is to have you guys think that Dave's not here. We can't make this happen.
As I'm getting distracted from the kids. I don't have a sitter today, so it's like you are fine.
So Nordic Dragon 89 says, "What's the favorite way to have the group start as a coherent group that already know each other, just to avoid the whole you meet in a tavern? Do you use group backgrounds, that kind of stuff?" So I think there's a very easy way to go about doing that. And that is to not do any work at all. You throw it out to your players and you say, okay, you guys know each other. Figure it out and tell me how. And when you do that, you don't have to do any of the story. You let them do it. And this allows them to figure out, okay, well, how did I meet George? How did I meet Fred? How did I meet Anna? And you can build these little cross connections. You can figure out, okay, well, the dwarf and the elf, are they like Legolas and Gimli at the beginning of Lord of the Rings, or like the end of Lord of the Rings? So if you have these connections figured out, you can be, you can have the group already together, and you don't have to go through that long, tedious, all right, how do I tie everything together?
Yeah, I would say session 0 is a great way to have that happen. And I'm saying that's what I use from now on.
I got to interrupt on this one, Nate. Epic gym explosion, Nate. Tell your kids you'll give them to the Goblin King if they don't behave.
A Goblin King, wherever you may be.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah. So as far as I'm concerned, session 0 is how I do intros now. And even for the fan game, we kind of started out. You're part of the guild of the Nag, and that is how you're going about stuff. So you start off basically you're either on a mission for the guild or something that you signed up for. So yeah, it's not like, oh, I wonder why all these people are together. No, it's like you're getting paid probably, or it's part of your contract to do said job.
That is one of the easiest way. Because you could literally be like, okay, you were given the job today, and you were told to meet at this point, and your group is going to go. So you could still have the intro of, hi, I'm so-and-so, but without having the, well, how do I get the party together? They're given a mission. They're there. They're done. Go. I literally did it for one of my games. I did it the opposite direction. I gave them they were given a mission. They were already successful, and en route back is where they encountered my story. So I thought that was a fun little twist. So let's see here. Any other questions going on? So
yeah.
What do you guys think will be or want to be in Xanathar's Guide to Everything?
All right. Well, I would like several of the Unearthed Arcana that I feel like they've really fleshed out well. I'd like them in there. And you know what? If Mystics is done, I want it in there. I don't want to wait for Eberron so they can unroll it out in a campaign setting. I want it to seem legitimate, as legitimate as it can be.
So yeah, I would agree. The what do you call it? The Artificer, the Mystic. I think they're pretty solid classes. I think that they can be brought in as full legit classes. I think that they need to be considered legitimate for Adventure League, because I think a lot of people want to take them down that road.
My
So
biggest issue with psionics has always been that it's always off to the side. You have to get it in a source book or campaign setting, or when the game first comes out, they're like, yeah, we'll do psionics later. And I understand the reason for separating that, because it is more of, it can be easily interpreted as more of a sci-fi fantasy um, setting for a class for a setting like that, rather than something that's like iconically, fighter, wizard, thief, that kind of thing.
and to an extent, I think, like, I don't have, like, while I know Nate digs psionics and there's a lot of really cool stuff that can be done with it, I do see it as an extra. I do see it as a side thing. It is not needed to run your typical fantasy things, and therefore I think it does fall into the extras. It falls to the wayside because they can honestly be like, well, we'll release this in a supplement later. And there's the core classes throughout the editions. They've kind of shifted and grown and changed. I mean, initially, you had the kind of core. Sorcerer eventually, came out, but that wasn't a thing in second edition that I remember. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. You have, I mean, initially Fighter was the fighting man. So, I mean, things make some changes. Things go through many different iterations, if you will. But psionics has not been in the core in any kind of long time. I mean, even if I remember, was it back then? I mean, first edition wasn't psionics like you could be psionic. That was a weird thing. I don't know. It's kind of disappeared from me. So we'll see what happens there. So Doodad wants to know what we do with the YouTube monies. So I'll answer that question. Our goal, as we've stated many times, is we are looking to be professional nerds. Right now, Dave is actually working for Nerdarchy full time. So most that money, actually all of it at this point in time, is going directly to pay his mortgage and feed his kids so that he can grow the business, do these live chats, and kind of do Nerdarchy full time while the rest of us kind of do it part time. So Comic Book University kind of confirms. I remember it being almost impossible to be a psionicist in second edition. So I've seen Poison. I've seen very little information in regards to what exactly is going to be in Zarathan's guide. So I don't know. Like, I know that some of the Unearthed Arcana is planning to be there. So it's definitely like anything is a possibility, because literally, like, the downtime events, the subclasses, classes, all of that stuff has kind of been in Unearthed Arcana. So if they're literally pulling from there, any of that is possible. But there's plenty of subclasses that they've done, and they've started tweaking some of them. Our video went up yesterday that Nate and I did on the 3 from the most recent Unearthed Arcana. But psionics did come out as Unearthed Arcana, so it is possible. Both Mystic and Artificer. That's where we're getting that information. So it's possible that that's going to be in there. Literally until they specifically say what's in it, or we get our hands on a copy, I don't really know. So Kyle's asking for more steampunk, and Comic Book University says that'll be next Friday. Adam Sloan, do you do a video explaining multi-classing in D&D 4E? We haven't done much 4th edition content. That's kind of not our strength, not our expertise. We did play 4th edition for, I want to say, about a year and a half when it came out, but it really didn't feel It didn't really feel like D&D. While it was a decent rule set for a tabletop role-playing game, to me there was just something that was off, something that was just not quite right on, or not quite feeling like D&D. So we said, okay, well, what do we want to try instead? And this was, I guess, before Pathfinder really got any traction. It didn't, it didn't come to my notice, and possibly to the others, but like never thought, oh well, let's go to Pathfinder. So we went in another direction. We started playing some superhero games, and that got us looking at some other rule sets. That's where we played some Palladium superheroes. We played some Mutants and Masterminds. I wound up running a Dresden Files RPG game using the Mutants and Masterminds. So I can't really speak to fourth edition with a lot of confidence. I remember playing a couple of different fightery types. I remember playing I don't know whether it was some kind of spellcaster, and I know that once I got to a certain point, my at will power was literally hitting a 3x3 grid, and I thought that was pretty awesome. Eric Hansen is calling out for we need to do our 5th edition needs Al-Qadim. That is something that we kind of jokingly talked about as what happens when we finish up our Eberron and our Dark Sun videos.
Hollow World.
As Nate rejoins, we have definitely got some topics and some conversations happening in regards to that. Al-Qadim is not something I've ever actually played in, and I agree with Nate. I think Hollow World was a very underprinted and under-acknowledged gem that I think literally could be something that's like, oh, well, yeah, you're playing a homebrew or you're playing a printed world. We could just add Hollow World to it, and until you find out about it, you never knew that it was already right there. It can literally be dropped into anywhere.
And that's why I'm interested in seeing it, is because you can just have it, well, instead of right under the Underdark, like if you go really deep, you've got to pass through this weird whatever where the gravity changes or something, and bam, you're in Hollow World. So you can port it into any world you're playing on.
This is an amusing question. Favorite class in Mutants and Masterminds? Mitch, you're funny. if you know anything about Mutants and Masterminds, then you know that it's a completely classless system. You build your character exactly the way you want it. There is nothing that's determined randomly. Your GM sets your power points to build your character, and you can say, okay, well, I want to be stat heavy, or I want to be power heavy, or I want to do whatever. So you can literally do whatever you want. You just have to make the points stretch to your goal.
He was testing you. You have passed the test.
So Hector Gray, yeah, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I personally like 4th edition, but I honestly reckon it would have been far better received had it been named something other than Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, that's my exact point on it. So Brad Scary, somehow I've not watched any of your Eberron series yet. Well, go over to the YouTube channel when this is over and go check out all the cool Eberron videos that Dave and I have been plunging out with. They're a lot of fun, and I think Eberron is probably one of the most richest campaign settings that's out there. I have not gamed in it nearly as much as I would like. I really like Dark Sun, but Dark Sun you have to have a certain frame of mind. I think it's really good to read the Dark Sun novels, even though there's only 13 of them. Playing in it, you have to realize that there's certain aspects, certain things that are going to transpire in that world that you just don't deal with, and that's one of the challenges for making it in 5th edition, is because okay, well, your Outlander or your Ranger being able to always find food, well, that's not necessarily the case in 5th edition in Dark Sun. So it would be pretty tough to to port that over. Finding food, finding water, like that's life or death out there. And not having metal, so the armor rating is different. So I don't know how that would wind up playing with the bounded accuracy situations. So I would love to see. Yeah, see that? There you go. You got that perfectly right there. Nicholas Duchek, Tribe of One is freaking awesome. Hands down, that was one of the best trilogies ever done. I love that so much. I actually ran a Tribe of One tabletop game in college, and in my opinion, is probably one of the best games I've ever run. I wish I could go back in time and record those sessions, just because it was the concept of the game was just awesome.
It was a lot of fun. I definitely liked it. Let's see. How do you guys deal with PCs that have totally different alignments? For example, he plays true neutral in a party with lawful stupid and chaotic secretive. And that's from Poison.
All right, so there's a couple different things to look at when you're dealing with alignment issues. Part of it is it's going to be the player's problem, and when the group is going to argue, the DM gets to sit out. The DM gets to sit down and take a break while they figure out what's going on. Hopefully, you can step in and stop or prevent party on party crime if that's what your group is against. But if your party is completely okay with PC versus PC combat, then let the dice roll, my friend. I tend to that's a good idea, McCoy. Run the Tribe of One with the fans. So I tend to try and tell my players at a session 0 or when they're entering the game, I want to run a game for heroes. Unless I'm running an evil game, there's really no reason that more than one player in a party can be evil. And like even then, I do try to strongly discourage. Like, all right, you want to be evil, be selfish, and just like work for money, and kind of you can argue with the players, and that's fine. But ultimately, side with we're going to do the right thing for whatever reason you need to do. That's just the way I tend to go. How about you, Nate?
As far as playing the different alignments, I would say, if someone's being chaotic good tends to sometimes break written laws because they see them as irrelevant or not pertaining to them. So it's like they don't say, "Oh, should I do this?" and then consult the book of laws first before unless they think they're going to get in trouble for it and get punished for it. So it's kind of like, I guess, for secretive in that sense, they're trying to make sure that some well-meaning busybody it doesn't get them put in jail for some reason when they didn't do really nothing wrong, as far as they're concerned. And lawful stupid, I can see if you're like, you've broke the law and I've witnessed it in front of you, and I'm a paladin. You should go. I have to take you to the constable. So those are situations where it's really irritating. If the chaotic guy gets you in trouble with his secrets, or if the lawful whatever guy gets you in trouble with the law by being a witness for the law against the party, it's like, well, that's against the party's interest. So I'd really like to play a game where the characters are stuck together in such a way that when you start the game, regardless of alignment, as long as it's not too far of a stretch, like chaotic evil or neutral evil and lawful good is kind of a stretch, unless they hide it the whole time. And at that point, you're playing a character who's playing a character, so that's kind of a little too weird because it just would seem like it's chaotic action in a sense. So I would say those are easy to say, yeah, don't put those people together. But true neutral is kind of an irritation in my point. It's like the people who say, well, I'm a centrist. Really, what's a centrist when it comes down to it? Are you a person that loves to stick to the middle of something because you don't want to pick sides? And that's not really it. You probably just don't want someone to upset your personal apple cart. So maybe you're more of a different type of person than like true neutral was. You have lawful good, chaotic evil, and true neutral in the center. And back in the day, it was more of the idea of the powers of law and chaos that you were aligned with, and neutrality was you weren't in the fight. You would just want nature to continue on its path and like things to go along the direction that they were going, rather than the idea of basically siding with the demons, siding with the angels, those kind of things. So true neutral doesn't really mean much to me now compared, if you know.
Well, another direction to take is like, you know, to not really focus on alignment, and that, like, I don't feel with the current rule set that alignment is really all that necessary. I think that like they're slowly making it less and less important, and eventually it's going to be like, okay, well, you know, what do you really look at? You know, you're going to have views, you're going to have those bonds and flaws more than you're going to have the actual alignment, because it's too much of a challenge. Like, I don't know, I find that it creates more problems than it actually solves.
Well, I think it also has to do more with, you know, nowadays people identify more with a moral relativism rather
Right.
than like there is a black and white to good and evil.
Right.
And I think that has leaked into the game
Right.
as, you know, a separatory thing for in that instance. It's like the idea like angel, you know, the whole idea with like people like redeeming demons, like, well, no, they're just going to try and screw you in some way. they're not trying to be good. They've got a different angle on screwing you over and making sure that the light dies. That's it.
So we've crossed more than our halfway point at this point in
Oh, way
time.
more.
So
Yeah.
I will reach out and say, you know, it's time to do that roll call. So why don't you sound off while you guys are kind of writing in on that. I will put out there. Don't forget to check out the GoFundMe page. We are looking to get out to the West Coast for GM tips with Satine Phoenix. You know, we've kind of got plane tickets covered at this point in time, and we are wrangling of where we're going to sleep. And if you've got a couple bucks or, you know, a willingness to share, you could do that. We would greatly appreciate it. Let's see here. So we got First Watch 328 in Tampa, Poison Kuwait in the house. Always great seeing, you know, as much as I love our USA people, I love hearing the people that are international. Uncle Peter in Toronto, Zareft Gaming in New Mexico, Lincoln in Sweden. We've got Comic Book University this time from Muspelheim. We've got Shane Carr in Oregon, Nordic Dragon 89 in Sweden. It jumped on me here, sorry. So there we go. Joseph saying aloha from Hawaii. We have Washington, Tallahassee, Florida, another Sweden, Oregon, Mississippi, Fort Lauderdale, Tesmic in Australia, Jimmy from California, Acolyte from Boston, Columbia, South Carolina, Philip in Philly. So you're close. Make sure you look into the Nerdarcon coming up next month. You're close for that one. Eric from Texas. Chris Evans, inside the neutron flow, reversing the polarity. Man, you better watch out. That's crazy stuff. We got Dowlin, I'm hoping I pronounced that right. Budapest, Hungary. We got Straya, Minnesota. Alberta, Canada. Earth in the Milky Way Galaxy, Edmonton. I don't even know how to pronounce that. Asperswith. We got another in Ohio, another in Hungary. Dave reaching in from Route 76. Yeah, Shane, you've already called me out on my mispronunciation. What a god! I just can't talk today. So yeah. All right, so that's the sound off. Awesome to see you guys. We got 54 people watching right now. That's watching / listening. Yeah, Shane, I can always laugh at myself, so it's not a big deal that you guys are laughing at me too. Oh man, we got someone from Miskatonic University. Oh crap. Oh well, we apparently lost someone. We're down to 53 people now watching. Oh no. So we got about another 15, 20 minutes left to hang out with you guys. If you have any questions you specifically would like us to go into, or Nate and I are gonna just do some world building stuffy here, we can kind of get into whatever. I don't know if Nate realizes that he's muted, but he's
I am muted.
Laughing at the chat and making comments and not being heard.
Tesmix says you're not failing at speaking, you're just using thieves' cant. I think that's a great excuse.
No.
Sure.
You guys can do what you want with that, but no, it's just Ted failing. I've literally been talking on the phone most of today's, and it's just nonstop for me lately with us trying to get this convention off the ground. So
Eric Hansen's got a question. Do you think you could pull off a Trigun RPG, and how do you think you would do it? All right, I haven't thought about it at all, but I'll think about it right now. You know what? I would probably go with just to use D&D 5e because that's just really easy to manipulate for me. So I would say modern. I would use modern, where guns are still rare, but you can still get a hand on, hold of them. Like revolvers and stuff like that, but anything that the main characters use would be more a rare item or like a magic item, basically, like the Preacher's Cross thing that has a whole bunch of guns on it and the big rocket launchers and stuff. That would be like a magic item, I would say. And Robert, I'm not really familiar with GURPS, except that just from hearing it, I didn't kind of like it that much, so I didn't end up learning it ever. But I would go with something kind of like Dark Sun if you had a Dark Sun-esque game, because you could have the crazy monsters if you wanted to. You could have all this other kind of stuff, or you could just use bandits and people. But I would probably add in some monsters because I just don't. Even bandits, I just don't like killing people in RPGs that much. If that's what it's all about. So, and then you just have to make special. You could say that Vash and the other people that are like him would be more like almost like going through dragon transformation in a sense, because they're on that immortal power level in a way. But anyway, that's where I'd start.
Well, you're gonna know that better than I am because I don't know anything about Trigun. So you're the anime guy here.
You should. It's good. It's classic.
There's a lot of stuff that I should know that there's just not enough time to do all the stuffs. First Watch 328 wants to know to revise the spell list ranger to include superiority dice. I think it's a decent add if you want to remove something else from what they actually get in the Unearthed Arcana, or you could literally just be like, well, I'm going to strip out the spells. Take everything that's in the player's handbook, cut out the spells, and add superiority dice. I don't think that's a bad idea. It does enable them to be far more combat driven. So I would be careful, because if you I don't know, I'd have to seriously go in and look, but it's definitely not something I'd be against. Now we have lots of GURPS talk going on, which I myself haven't done in either. There's plenty of other RPGs that I look at that are generic that I would look at instead.
So Hector Gray says, GURPS is a fantastic toolkit for making a custom campaign. It requires a massive amount of upfront work from the GM to make even a simple campaign playable, though. You're really not selling the sizzle, Hector. You're not selling the sizzle at all. You have just made me think perhaps I should not even look at it at all. Yeah, because no, because what I just said for Trigun, I could probably run a game in if my fan game was something that wasn't picked out yet, I would probably just be like, oh, let's just run Trigun and just go with it. So, but that sounds like a lot of work, but rather than just being able to wing it based on what I know about the 5e rules. That's the power I see in 5e is, with just a few of the Unearthed Arcanas, the modern rules and things, you can really get a lot out of it without without rewriting the rule book.
So when I look at possible options for, I want to run something that doesn't look like it's going to fit into a Dungeons and Dragons format. My go-to is, okay, well, can it be run in Cypher? Can it be run in Mutants and Masterminds, or can it be run in Fate? And depending upon what level of complexity you want your characters to build, that's going to determine what rule system is going to best fit there. And okay, you want to make character creation easy. Okay, well then let's go with Fate. If you want to make it a little bit more complex and have more choices to decide from, all right, let's go for Cypher. All right, you want to make heavily customized characters in be able to do specifically what they want, only being given the limitations set by the GM. All right, that's Mutants and Masterminds. Literally, there's no limitations beyond what the DM GM sets in Mutants and Masterminds. So, and it's literally all of those games can be run in any thematic setting. You can have guns, or you can have melee weapons, or you can have both. All of them kind of allow for all of it. So,
Right. Dalen Johnson says, Downtime, how do you make it flow for long-term events such as constructing and building, etc.? As far as constructing and building, I would, as the GM, I would have in my mind how many man hours and how long it's going to take, and almost make it like a quest. Not like, oh, you've got to go on the quest to do stuff, unless they want special material for it, like it's a mage tower and they need special, I don't know, like however many tons of pixie dust or something. Or like,
I was thinking like you're talking about a specific building material that you want to build the whole thing out of. So I want gravity stone built in this, and it's not so it's resist being knocked over easier. Okay, well then you need to go find however many metric tons of gravity stone, whatever, go do it.
Well, yeah, I guess I would call that like special lodestone keystones or something that I would enchant so that it could float or something. If you wanted to do that kind of stuff, but if it's just a building somewhere that's made like if common people with carpentry and stonemasonry can build the inn, and they could also build your building, then there's no real reason to have the players do it. I don't think you're suggesting that, but I think you want to have a certain amount of time. So anything that happens to that town, like if there's a shortage on wheat and people are like, well, I can't help build your building, I have to go in the fields and harvest, or I can't, monsters attacked last week and your building happened to be hit or damaged while it was being constructed. Or like if they choose to do, if you have quests and they choose to not do them and they choose to do other things, kind of have that affect their life in some way, if it's legitimate, not just go out of your way like, oh, the drow dug up from the Underdark and they just happened to do it at your building. Like that would be kind of messed up. But if they found kind of like underground tunnels of an old mine, that could be an adventure that gets them distracted from the building, but it also needs to be sealed up and fixed before they can continue their construction. But you could, in the end, if you're going to have, it's going to take 3 months to build the size building they require, just have other people build it for you. Don't involve the PCs beyond like just getting the money together and getting the skilled labor together and protecting that labor. If it's an outpost, you're gonna have to protect that labor for the months while they're building.
Yeah, I would just look at figure out, as Nate says, how much they're spending, how much can be built in a day, and unless the players are like, I want to help and I want to make rolls, like you could totally make it a skill challenge, and depending upon how good they do, then it gets done faster. If they're using Tensor's floating disk to move building materials to the right location, and they're making tool checks to build it faster, telekinesis to move I-beams and that kind of stuff, then sure, it's going to get done so much faster.
That's a good point, Ted. That's a good point. If you give them a base time and then have the players kind of like mini game their way into, well, how would my character help build this faster?
But it depends upon like whether the players want to be involved. If they're like, oh well, as you said, the common folk are going to build it for me, and I'm paying X amount. Okay, well then that'll get done in whatever time frame works best for you. And as the DM, it's your narrative and the players' choice as to what their involvement is. So come up with what you think works best. 1,000 gold pieces a day per, you know, for it, modified by how many NPCs you're going to pay to be a part of the building team, blah, 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 blah. It's as much math as you want it to be. Pick something out of your head and run with it, or, put as much work and detail into the construction process as you like.
Just don't go with a base of 1,000 gold pieces a day unless it's made out of gold bricks. That was a little high for an estimate.
I just was pulling a number out of my head. I don't know what the costs are of a variety of different buildings.
And I was just making a check against that number to say, yes, that was a totally made up number. That wasn't like based off of, because I think a castle is like what, like 50K or 250K. So
well, there's a big difference.
I guess 1,000 gold pieces a day for a 250K castle would be legitimate. It would take almost a year and a lot of people. But yeah, there's a big difference between 50K and 200.
But that's why I was saying modified by how many people are actually doing it. So like,
yeah, and exactly what the costs in the area are, and if they're low on funds, have them figure out how they could, maybe they go off and get a quarry mine back from a group of goblins or something, or they free up a section if they need land. Maybe they free up a section of a swamp that gets turned into farmland. So someone, the king's like, hey, thanks for making all that farmland for me. I'm going to gift you this hill where you can put, which is a great place to put a keep on. So, you can go ahead and do all this like give and take and make it kind of, don't make it involve like arduous for the players to get anything done, but, make it seem like it wasn't just like, push button, get bacon.
Yes. And you're absolutely right, Bill. There was back in the day, you would actually get to a certain level, certain classes got access to either henchmen or, in your case, a castle, fort, or a keep. And it was something that is like, okay, well, this is just built into it. You clearly have, gotten enough fame and, notoriety that somebody is like, oh, well, here you go do something with this. Yeah, I remember back in the day wanting to actually have a dude who just wanted to do nothing more than like be a general in an army, and the DM was like, oh, I love it, I'm gonna make you a king. Like, so like the major quest was like, us taking over this castle. And I'm like, how does being king make me general of an army? Like, I don't get to go do the leading, I get to tell someone else to go do it. This didn't work.
Yeah, and you know what? In that, I believe in second edition, they still had currently you don't level up until the GM says you level up, but you could be at 8th level for a very long time, even though you've got the XP for it. Technically, especially if they had the training rules and stuff like that, there might be something epic that you need to do to get that keep and castle. Xerath Gaming, sounds like you make a bucket load of money, but your DM won't. You don't think your DM will allow it. Well, you do it you could always do it the sneaky way, which is where you hire all the people for it, pay all the gold out, and then say, okay, these people are under my hire. I've retained them with money. Like I own their time, their work time for the next year. I have carpenters, I have stonemasons, and don't tell them why. I have blacksmith, I have all these things. And be like, and I want them to build me a castle. Here, I've got this thing I'd like them to do since I own their time right now. Here's the materials. So that's what I would do. Because then if the DM just I don't want you to build a castle, well, why not? Like if he's giving you tons of cash, what does he want you to do? Sit on it like a dragon?
Yes.
If you're not doing cool stuff in the world with a whole bunch of money, what the heck? Money is valueless. If you've got 1 million gold pieces and you can't buy a dang castle or build one, then it's absolutely worthless. It's to a certain extent. I mean, like, what can you do with your money if you can't do stuff that happens normally in the world? I mean, I understand maybe you need to be a lord or something before you get a castle, like before you have a fiefdom assigned to you. If it's a feudal system, that makes sense. So you'd have to do something for the king, because he's not just going to say, oh yeah, go buy land and build a castle like an invading army. He'd want your loyalty to be like, it's cool that you're going to have a castle there because you're under my control. So I could see that that's reason it could be considered like an act of war if you're building a castle in somebody else's land area.
Well,
Because
it's part of that really does reach out to the DM who is limiting players and controlling players, and they want to stomp their feet. Not in my game. It's like DMs are supposed to give their players freedom, and like, okay, well, maybe if you want them to build a keep somewhere else, like, then it should be done through, okay, well, get an NPC to talk to them and figure out why this is a bad idea, or why it's a bad idea to do it here, rather than just be like, no, you can't do that. Like, DMs should not be seeking to tell their players no. They should be seeking to find a way to give the players what they want. Like, this is a game for everyone to have fun, not for a person to be like, well, I'm going to tell my story, and you're going to do what I want.
And when we say that, when Ted and I say that kind of stuff, we mean within reason. For example, I know Scott was really irritated in your game when he couldn't have basically a whole bunch of magical super soldiers.
Well, yes.
And I was like, this is not Fallout 4 and we just found a whole bunch of sets of power armor. This is a game that magic items are just not manufactured like a car shop. It's not just like dun, 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 dun. So getting a whole entire garrison full of these super soldier suits is not something legitimate in a game where we don't want it to be Eberron.
Yes. Well, I mean, it has nothing to do with wanting to be Eberron. The actual setting itself, it doesn't have hordes of legendary magical items running around, and legitimately the idea he had was each thing that was going to be, this is going to be issued to the common military, each one was an artifact. Literally
Really?
it would sense whether or not the person wearing the armor was injured to incapacitation, linked to a teleportation circle back in town, able to then teleport the next person waiting in line into the suit so that the suit would keep fighting.
Wow. I didn't even know about that. I just thought it gave them benefits to strength and the physical stats and armor and stuff.
It was magical full plate that was sealed, which would make them impervious to any kind of gas attack. It would enhance.
So as an exosuit.
It was absolutely 100% an exosuit in a D&D setting that had all of these other fantastic qualities. It was a really phenomenal idea. And if you were in Eberron and you had like teams of artificers working on designs, they could eventually make it happen.
But I have to say, it's not an artifact level power just to be able to teleport somebody out and teleport somebody in.
But
you could say an augmented sense life ability, which is a really low level spell, would be like, oh, this person is really about to die. They get teleported out, which is a 5th or 6th level spell. Then 5th or 6th level spell later, somebody gets teleported in. Maybe it needs to be charged. Maybe
his idea was like it didn't require actions on the person in the suit. The suit was doing it itself. Okay. So therefore, you get knocked down. The suit, as a reaction, would teleport and switch places with someone who's back in town waiting. So you had 100 people in these suits that, because technically armor doesn't take damage in 5th edition, the player, the character does.
But when it does, it's going to be ugly. You just shatter the heck out of that suit.
Yeah. So therefore, like, it just didn't fit our setting. Maybe many millennia down the road, or maybe millennia, backwards.
I think Aces should be able to build one of those now. Just one. That's like full plate adamantium mithril armor that also has its own atmosphere or whatever inside of it. And then but I think he'd have to charge it. He'd have to charge it with a teleport spell every day.
Yeah, I think there's ways to make something like that be possible, but 5th edition doesn't have the legitimate rules like earlier editions for making magic items, and they did that on purpose because it's not what players are meant to be doing. They've removed that from the common core of the edition.
And that's because it got completely out of hand in Crazy Town.
So, like, I would like to look at, what is a decent system for doing it. I would like to see, how something like that could be done, and find a way to make something be a possibility for high level casters to make magic items. I don't think first and third level characters should be like, well, I want to make wondrous items. Like, that to me, that's totally what third edition did, and yeah, it's crazy.
I'm cool with making magic items. I just don't think it's I don't want it to be not special. I guess so. Making 100 of those suckers would be not special. Making one
Sure.
of them, and it's like it could be called the golem, and that's just the town's golem, and you basically would make like an insignia or a badge or something that would denote that you're one of the guardians.
Mm-hmm.
And at any time you would get spirited away into the suit based on who's injured and where, and then there would be like a central location where everybody is kind of like the Church of Light. Everyone just would get teleported to some kind of stone apparatus or a chamber inside the Church of Light somewhere,
right?
And spare the dying, bam, 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 and they're like, okay, but they're just barely escaped death, basically.
Right.
And at any time, a person wearing an insignia could get put into the suit, which could be a cool story element when there's some kind of crazy attack or someone's trying to kill the king or mayor or whatever we have at the time that this guardian is protecting. And you get put into the suit and you're like totally overwhelmed. And then you end up in this capsule somewhere. You're like, where am I? Just because you stole somebody's pin. I think that could be a cool kind of like strange quest thing that happens for later down the line. Like someone like, what if Aeson made one of these suckers and it's in Gryffindor? That could be something that happens in one shots and other things. Instead, you get teleported into the suit.
Right. So we got a question from Heavy Armored Mage. Wants to know what our opinion is on the I can carry everything build, stacking Bear Totem, powerful build, and Brawny. And we I don't know who I've talked about this before. It's kind of rather silly. Like if you're like, all right, well, I want to make this dude who's got to be able to carry vast amounts of weights. And it can get to the point where what you can carry is ridiculous. I think we talked about being able to put a car on this guy's back once you got to like a 20 strength.
Volkswagen Beetle.
But honestly, like to me, it doesn't matter. Like we've played in games where we came back with so much loot, there was legitimately no feasible way to carry all of that stuff.
Even a person with all those things stacked on wouldn't be able to carry the amount of stuff.
It really just comes down to how much you care about encumbrance. And if a character is really devoted to that build, that at some point in time, like that's got to come up where only he can do this thing, and he's being rewarded for his, in my essence, like a RP or ribbon ability, and so much of his character devoted to it. Like, all right, well, this pillar is crushing this small child, and no one else can lift it, but you know what, you can, and you save this kid's life, and that kid gets to go on and do something awesome because you did it. And like that's what I would do. But like, do I feel it's broken? Do I feel it's an issue? No, but I also don't play with encumbrance. I think it's a unnecessary bookkeeping part of the game. Like, okay, well, I've got 50 cannonballs that I'm carrying around. No, probably not, because you have nothing that's going to support all of that, and it doesn't make sense. Why would you need to be carrying them? But I've got 4 million gold pieces. Well, you know what? I don't care about that because it's gold, and you probably come to some point where you've liquidated it down to platinum or to gems or a combination of the two. You might not be carrying it all at the same time. You've got something that will be your home base or whatever have you. It's just not something that I feel I care enough about, and I don't want to. And I don't want to push to my players and be like, all right, well, make sure you've got your encumbrance figured out. Now, yeah, that definitely allows strength to be less important if you're playing the mage types. But I will reward your RP choice by putting story things into the game that are going to get you some kind of role playing or whatnot benefit because you made that choice.
And I'd have bards make stories about you.
Yeah,
Because that's on like unnaturally superhero level ability to hold and carry something. You'd be like the avatar of Atlas on the world in a sense. compared to everyone else, that's pretty much what you'd be viewed as. They'd be thinking you're like the son of a giant god or something like that, like the bastard son of a giant god. You could probably even say that's what you are, and everyone would believe you.
Yeah, you could adopt the surname Giant's Blood.
Yeah.
Hercule High Mountain. So I mean, there you go. There's my 2 cents. That's what I would do with it. I don't think it's broken. Nothing in there about any of those say they don't stack with something else. And Nate and I did a video. Might go up next week or this week or next week, talking about combining the same kind of things just with movement speed.
Yeah, where we attempt to break the sound barrier.
All right, so it's about almost quarter after 1. Nate and I do have other things that we need to get to today. So thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for spending a little bit of time on your day with Nerdarchy. Check out the links to our stuff. We got things going. We really want to do weekend to weekend events. The convention in the East Coast, the hangouts on the West Coast. So we really thought that once we were given the opportunity to, head out to California and do stuff there, that it was real.
It's totally screenshot time. Just saying.
I'm already married, dude. Sorry.
Hey, polygamy is gonna making a run for it. There's always hope. Don't give up.
Well, talk to my wife about that first. But what do you call it? So like after we realized that we were going to go out to the West Coast, we're like, well, we haven't really gotten any kind of big events on the East Coast that we've done with Nerdarchy. So we're trying to do a coast to coast thing, trying to make a literally within 7 days hanging out with people on both sides of the country. So if you're able to make one of them, awesome. If you're not able to make it, but you want to share out the events, we would take it as a as a kindness. We really do all that we do because you guys out there are awesome, because that you enjoy hanging out with us just as much as we enjoy hanging out with you guys.
And those links will be able to be found below, as well as if you want to go to our Facebook group, there's the links are like probably on the first page right now. So you can find links for both events relatively easy on the Facebook page. And that makes it easier for sharing on Facebook. All right.
Absolutely. So with that, until next time, guys, stay nerdy.